What if Tensura, the jewel of Tempest? Rimuru was taking a break after the entire orc invasion incident and decided to take a stroll through the forest. While walking along, he runs into a monster that was run out of their home by the orcs and lost their entire family to the attack. The story will follow the main story beats of the light novel, but events will be changed due to a close bond forming between Rimuru and the new monster. The bond will be explored along with the world around the two of them, giving more depth to the characters and allowing them to move outside of the main story's narrative. Chapter 11 Envoys Part 1. Katarina's POV. It has been a few months since Milim's sudden departure, and the city was left quiet and peaceful in her wake. I had slowly started getting back into my old schedule with combat practice and blacksmithing in the mornings before having the afternoon mostly to myself. With everything that has happened, I normally found myself back in the training fields during the afternoon with Hakuru as I slowly improved my technique and combat intuition. It was a slow, painful process, but over the days I noticed the improvement in our mock fights. Between the spar I had, and completely lost, against Phobio, the fight against Charybdis, and sparring with Milim, I realized just how strong the people around me were. It wasn't that I was weak, so much as each one of them was strong. I knew this and had accepted it, but I realized that if we were going to be associating with demon lords and other powerful people, then I needed to grow rapidly to keep up. I had no intention of starting a fight with anyone, but with there being multiple demon lords and at least one looking to continue causing problems here in Tempest, I wanted to be prepared. The last thing I wanted was to become a burden to others. I had experienced that once already and never wanted to do so again, as it only led to the suffering of those who tried to protect me. Outside of the day-to-day activities, only a few things of note took place. The first was that Dad finally got around to scolding me for inserting myself into the fight against Charybdis. By the end of his rant, I did feel bad about what I did, as his worry for my safety was extremely clear, even if it was mixed in with his anger at me putting myself in potential danger. The conversation wasn't completely fruitless, as I did manage to get my own say in as well. We had a heart-to-heart, with great sage backing me up along the way, and I finally got through to him why I did what I did. I wasn't trying to show off, I wasn't trying to put myself into harm's way, I was simply trying to prove that I could help in times of crisis. I wanted to prove that I wasn't someone who needed to hide when danger happened to find us, and I actively wanted to help protect everyone else. The other notable events that happened were messengers from Eurasania asking to send envoys between our nations to work out the terms of the peace agreement, and Dworgen to finalize the date that we would travel there in person. While the days were quiet for the time being, the future was slowly shaping up to be anything but. With two major nations formally recognizing us, and one smaller nation informally recognizing us, it wouldn't be much longer before the world would start to take notice as well. With our own envoys setting off for Eurasania today, I wanted to talk with Benimaru beforehand, as he was the one leading the group. I was sure that Dad would make it in time for the speech, even if Shuna had to drag him here to make it happen, so I wasn't too worried about him missing it. Walking into the open area where everything was being prepared, I waved at Benimaru and called out to get his attention. Benimaru! Oh? Did you need something, princess? Benimaru asked. Hey! I told you not to use titles with me. I find them way too formal and stiff. I couldn't stop myself from crossing my arms and pouting a little at such a formal greeting. Benimaru, for his part, just gave a little laugh before responding. Sorry. We are in public and you need to keep your image up. So, what did you want to talk to me about that had you come early? Well, I hesitated a little to speak up, embarrassed that I was even going to request something so trivial. You see, I was hoping that you could do me a favor while on this trip. Taking a steadying breath, I continued. Can you try and gauge how strong the average lycanthrope is? Unable to bring myself to voice it out loud, I gave a little nod instead. I was afraid that if I admitted my own failure verbally, then I would be looked down on for being weaker than others. The last thing I wanted was to be seen as weak. If I was seen as weak by others, then it would just lead to them trying to protect me and not letting me join any future defense efforts. Benimaru, for his part, seemed to understand my reluctance and continued speaking as if nothing had happened. I was planning to judge their military might while there anyway. I want to see what they are capable of so that in the unlikely event we go to war, we have some information to work with. I knew it was a roundabout way to answer my question, but it also helped me to save face. Outside of the single mention of Phobio, the conversation was played off as little more than his usual duty, so I thought I would get the information I wanted regardless. The answer I wanted was simple: am I weak? Or are those who visited just the stronger members of their group? My request boiled down to my lack of knowledge about the world we lived in. I wanted to know the overall ranking of people across the world, instead of just those that I lived and worked alongside daily. With my personal conversation over with, and the final preparations in place, it was time for the speech from Dad before our envoy team set off on their journey. I walked towards the raised area in the main square where the speech would be happening and made it there just as I saw Dad walking towards me, with Shuna close by. The moment we stepped onto the stage, the gathered crowd started an uproar. I looked out to them, and their smiling faces looked back towards us in response. Do they love us that much? Does our appearance like this bring them that much joy? I'll just blame it on Dad. The people see me daily anyway, and this never happens. I was drawn from my thoughts as Shin shouted for silence, and the entire crowd instantly obeyed the command. With Dad stepping up to address everyone, I was eager to hear his speech, as it had been a while since I was put up in a spotlight like this. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope you will do your best for me, Dad said cheerfully. There was a brief pause after these words, which prompted Shuna to step forward. Is that it? She was clearly confused about why it was so short, just as I was. Dad sheepishly replied, Yeah, maybe that wasn't enough. I'll give them a little more. What followed was a proper speech covering the basics of what the envoys could expect and what they should do. The main goal was to see if we could remain on equal and peaceful footing with them. The last thing we wanted was for a clash of ideologies to undermine any treaty we might make in the future. With the crowd cheering once more, we moved to talk with the envoys directly, instead of the masses. They all seemed eager to set out, and I couldn't blame them, as they would get the chance to explore the world outside of the forest, which had been their home for their entire lives. As the conversation continued, Dad said a few more things that were directed more at Benimaru than anyone else. I don't mind a mistake or two, but please don't start a fight yourselves, all right? I could almost hear the smirk as Benimaru responded to the comment. You're in good hands with us. His confidence was showing in spades as he spoke. I have learned quite a few lessons from Lady Milim. Any fool could understand that impudence leads to disaster. I couldn't help but to give a little nod as Benimaru said he learned a lot from my sister, even as I chose to ignore the negative meaning of his words. With the rest of the group spoken to as well, wishing them the best of luck, everyone prepared to leave. A quick signal to a nearby band had them playing music as a send-off, as our people headed out towards the Beast Kingdom of Eurasania. Benimaru's POV. The ride to Eurasania was peaceful. With no monster attacks thanks to me releasing a small amount of my aura, the trip through the forest was uneventful, to say the least. As we reached the lands outside of our own, I started to pay attention actively to what was around us, instead of passively scanning for threats. This land is far too flat. If a battle were to take place here, then both sides would be able to see each other coming from a good distance away. With no hills or woodlands, a sneak attack is basically impossible. I let the military side of my thoughts take over as I examined the lands we were traveling into. If Carrion was ever a threat in the future, then I wanted to make sure we had as much information as possible with which to defend ourselves from him. Over the course of several days, we traveled towards the capital of Eurasania, and it was clear that the outskirts of the kingdom were quite poor. Everyone had what they needed to survive, and there were no monster attacks to worry about, but the small towns and villages we passed were filled with weak people who had little to their names. The further we traveled into the kingdom, the stronger the residents became, and the more comfortable their lifestyles were. It quickly became clear that this was by design. However, even with the lack of wealth, everyone seemed happy with Carrion's rule. There were no complaints about it from those we talked to, and they spoke with honesty whenever we brought it up. Upon reaching the capital city of Laura, we had already seen a number of things that caught our attention, such as the agriculture and fruits. It was clear that the land was great for growing all kinds of different foods and materials, as the hobgoblins with me were already talking about how we could learn from them to improve Tempest going forward. When we arrived at the front gates of the city, we were greeted by none other than Beastmaster Carrion himself. "Welcome to Eurasania. I am glad to see that you made it here without any troubles along the way." With a little bow of my head and a smile on my lips, I responded. "The trip was uneventful thanks to your lands being free of threats, though it was boring as I wasn't able to stretch my muscles in a fight." "Ha ha ha. I like you. Well, in that case, would you like to have a friendly sparring match with Phobio?" Carrion suggested this even while leading us into the city itself. With a grin forming, I gave a nod. "That does sound like fun, but if I win, then I would like the chance to spar with you as well." "Deal. Though I hope you don't think you will be able to defeat me easily," came the response, and it was clear that Carrion was looking forward to it as much as I was. Looking around the city, I couldn't help but notice that the level of wealth here in the capital far exceeded that in the villages we passed through on our way here. My curiosity got the better of me as I asked about it, and the response was simple. The outer territories paid taxes to the capital in exchange for protection. The closer to the capital one got, the stronger the people you would come across, as Eurasania worked off the same rule all monsters follow: might makes right. Or in other words, the strong rule over the weak. While this was true, it didn't mean that the weaker people were neglected. Instead, if they paid their taxes, their safety was guaranteed. It wasn't long before we reached the training area that was used for the standing army, much like the one in Tempest. Phobio was already there and ran up to us once he saw Carrion walking next to me. With a bow to Carrion and a quick explanation about the spar we were about to have, a wide space was cleared out for us to use. The hobgoblins were standing on the sidelines agitated, and even Rigger was showing apprehension about the match. I wasn't about to let him ruin this chance, though. It was a friendly spar and nothing more. Neither side was about to try and hurt the other, so I saw no need to worry about the match in the first place. As the match between Phobio and myself started, it became clear that the fight itself was completely one-sided. I easily dodged every attack that was thrown at me, and with the longer reach of my sword, I was able to be on the offensive for most of the time. How did Lady Katarina get defeated by him? While he is by no means weak, he isn't a serious threat to me either. Perhaps I am being a little biased, as I am comparing the current her to him, instead of the past her when the fight happened. Lady Katarina has grown a lot since the encounter, so it would make sense that she would have surpassed what she was capable of back then. With a quick flourish of my sword to knock Phobio off balance, I smoothly brought the tip of my blade to his neck. The battle was over, and it wasn't even worth giving a serious effort to, with how easily the victory was accomplished. "Well then, Carrion, would you like to spar with me next? I think I am about warmed up now after all," I said while turning around to look at him. Carrion had already equipped his halberd as he started walking towards the empty area. "I did say that I would, and I am curious to see how strong you really are after seeing you defeat Phobio with such ease." As the two of us readied ourselves for the match, the empty area around us slowly became larger. With two large auras clashing against one another, every person in the training ground stopped what they were doing to watch what was about to go down. I felt a sense of pride as I noticed this. Everyone here recognized what was about to happen as something special. Staring each other down for a while, the air was tense with anticipation, even as the fight started in the blink of an eye. Carrion was faster than I was, and highly skilled as well. We met in the middle in a clashing of weapons as he aimed a thrust at my chest, only for me to deflect it aside at the last moment, sending it wide. Though the fight might have seemed even at first, it was clear that Carrion was the stronger person of the two of us. Sticking to pure physical combat, we exchanged blows that would seem like little more than blurs to the untrained eye, sparks flying each time our weapons connected. My slash at his side was blocked by the long, smooth handle of his weapon, only for the blade to be brought down towards me in retaliation. Pulling back, I quickly caught the blade of his halberd on my katana and angled myself so that the force was redirected away from my body. An attack from one side led to needing to defend on the other. It was a back and forth between us as I aimed yet another slice towards his neck, only for him to step back out of range, completely dodging me. I am glad to see that you have the strength to back up your title of Beast Master. If I didn't, then someone else would have claimed the throne long ago. Carrion shot back at me, even while aiming a thrust at my legs. I suppose that is true. I am glad for this chance to spar with someone so strong. I quickly sidestepped the thrust and aimed my own attack at his exposed arms. After what felt like forever, but was in reality only about 30 minutes, I could feel my concentration slowly slipping as the exhaustion started to creep in. Keeping a high level of concentration to both defend myself and attack at any opening was becoming more difficult as time passed. I was happy that I had managed to have such an amazing battle, but I was also determined to try and win our match, even as it was becoming clear who was stronger. Igniting my sword in black flames as a signal to Carrion to start using skills freely, I went on the offensive once more. Each of my attacks was fast and accurate, but Carrion was blocking them with ease while covering his weapon in his aura to help protect it from the flames. After a failed assault where I managed to keep him on the defensive for a short amount of time by not letting up on my attacks, he jumped back, creating some distance between us. Let's end this here and now. I would love to continue fighting, but it is clear that I am going to win. Carrion spoke out while gathering energy at the tip of his halberd in preparation for an attack. Agreed, let the next attack decide the outcome of the entire fight then, I responded, knowing that it was going to be difficult to defend. My pride wouldn't let me evade the attack while knowing he wasn't trying to kill me. I recognized the attack as a form of battle will and decided to take the attack head-on. I knew I wouldn't be killed by it if I defended, so I wanted to see just how strong the attack was by taking the full force of it. Infusing my own weapon with my aura, I stood ready to take the attack. With my preparations complete, I watched as a large ball of energy was shot directly at me. I couldn't help but to smile as I sensed everyone behind me quickly moving out of the predicted path, even as I slashed down at it. Catching the ball of Carrion's aura on my blade, I focused my energy into my sword as I stopped it in its path. I struggled to hold it at bay completely, with black flames and battle will covering my sword, but eventually, I managed to cut it in half, causing it to dissipate in the air around myself. You win. I exhausted my energy blocking that last attack. I walked over to Carrion as I spoke, my sword already put away. It seems I still have a long way to go, but I am grateful that I got this chance to fight against you. Carrion put his own weapon away as I approached him, a grin on his lips as I admitted that I had lost this fight. I am glad to see that Rimuru has people like you underneath him. It is not every day that I find someone I can spar against and enjoy myself while doing so. With the mutual respect built between us during the battle, a sense of calm fell over the training grounds as everyone stood watching the interaction. With a quick shout from Carrion, the silence was broken as the various groups went back to training, and my own group left the training grounds to talk about our purpose here. For the most part, I let Rigger and the other hobgoblins take on the roles of diplomats, as I was more here as their bodyguard than anything else. I did, however, take a special interest in the military of Eurasania and made a point to investigate it for future reference as much as I could. With many of the citizens able to fight if the need arose, the fighting power was nothing to look down upon. Every single person in the capital alone was ranked at least an A-, and the magical beasts that were tamed only added to that fighting force. I would not want to go up against them in a war if it could be avoided, but I was also silently confident that Tempest could win if we were forced into such a situation. Without seeing the lycanthrope forces in action during a conflict, I wouldn't say with complete certainty we would win, but with the diverse forces of Tempest, we would at least have the advantage in the forest. The different forces of Tempest all specialize in different areas, and they could be used in a hit-and-run fashion instead of an all-out frontal war. Over the next 2 days, each member that was selected for the envoys went about collecting information that we could bring back to Lord Rimuru, and started to form friendly connections with the people who lived here. Between the fruits and agriculture, there was much that Tempest could learn from the people of Eurasania, and I could tell there was much we could offer in return. I had already seen that they were trustworthy and had no issue with sending envoys without an escort next time, as I knew no harm would come to our people when they visited next. The spar with Carrion, and the following talks over the past few days, made it clear that he wanted this alliance to go through as much as Lord Rimuru did. With that in mind, I had no doubt that he would keep his word about everything we talked about, including making sure our people had safe travel in his lands. I at least have an answer for Lady Katarina now. It's not that she is weak, it is just that the people who have come to Tempest are stronger than normal. Compared to the average person, she would already be seen as stronger than them. It wasn't that she lacked the strength to match up against others like Phobio, instead, it was that she lacked the experience other seasoned warriors had. While strength is admirable, experience and skill will always be the deciding factor if the two sides are close in strength to one another. The fighters Lady Katarina had come across so far, outside of Lord Rimuru, have all had years to hone their craft, and it shows in battle. With all the tasks that we came here to do being wrapped up, and future visits being planned, the journey home began. I could tell that we made a good impression on them, and they made just as big of an impression on us as well. I was smiling faintly as we left the capital of Laura, as I knew the future was looking up for us. Shall we get home? I am sure Lord Rimuru will be eager to hear what we have to say, I said as our trip back home started. Yeah, came the response from all those with me. Chapter 12 Envoys Part 2. Katarina's POV. With the days passing in a blur of training, it didn't take long for the realization that time truly does fly when you aren't paying attention to come true. I was wandering around the city with Dad, or rather just following him as he checked up on the various projects that were being worked on, when Trainee appeared in front of us. Good afternoon, Lord Rimuru, Lady Katarina. I have come to inform you that the delegation from Eurasania has arrived in the forest and will be here in a few days, Trainee said after bowing to us. Thank you for the information, please inform me if anything else comes up, Dad replied smoothly, even as his eyes lingered just a little longer than I would have liked. Trainee smiled softly as she spoke up once more. Of course, it's no hardship on me. Now then, I had best be off. After saying this, she quickly disappeared from where she was standing in front of us only a second before. Dad, where were you looking just now? I trust that you weren't staring at her, I said, while watching his reaction. The response was immediate as he turned to face away from me ever so slightly before answering my inquiry. No, of course not. Why would I stare? Sigh. Dad, if you like someone then I won't complain. Well, so long as they are a good person. Just please make sure they truly care about you in return before acting on any feelings you might have. I tried to reassure him that I wasn't mad and that I would love if he found someone to love. It could be me, Great Sage spoke softly. What was that? Both Dad and I spoke up at the same time. Nothing, it was your imagination, Great Sage replied. I couldn't help but to look at Dad in confusion, but quickly brushed it off with a smile. While I wasn't sure how it would work out, I also wasn't against the idea of Great Sage being Dad's partner. She has been with him from the start and has helped both of us out whenever we needed it. If I was being honest, then I looked up to her as she was both smart and cool-headed. Nothing ever got to her, and it was reassuring to have someone who could think clearly even in the most chaotic of situations. I wouldn't voice these thoughts yet, but they were starting to surface regardless. I certainly wouldn't say no to having a mom, even if she didn't have a physical body with which to interact with me. The next several days passed without incident, the days going by as if nothing important was going on in the near future. That was the case for me at least. Dad and the other executives were currently working to make sure everything was perfect for the arrival of the Eurasania envoys. I wasn't really interested in the part of them being envoys, but I was greatly interested in meeting other lycanthropes. I could only hope that they wouldn't be as arrogant as Phobio was, as I didn't really want to deal with that sort of chaos again. One Charybdis was plenty for my lifetime. While I wasn't technically a lycanthrope by race, I was still thinking that it would be a good idea to learn about them, as I would no doubt get asked questions concerning their race when taking on my lycanthrope form. In the days before the envoys arrived, a couple of things of note happened. The first was that the champions group had come back to Tempest for some downtime after going town to town spreading the name of Tempest and their own reputation. There was a meeting that went down between Dad and the leader Yom, but I wasn't allowed to join in on it. From what I was told in the aftermath when I asked how the meeting went, they simply went over the recent events to have Yom up to date on what was going on here in the city. I wasn't really convinced by this. If that was all they talked about, then there would have been no need to exclude me. After some pressing on the matter, Dad finally told me that they were also drinking adult drinks, and he didn't want me around them. Adult drinks? You know, saying it like that only makes me want to try it even more, right? These were my thoughts at the time as I tried to think up a way to try this new drink I only just learned about. I wasn't really sure how I would get my hands on the drink, as I knew none of the executives would just hand it over when Dad said I couldn't have any. That meant I would have to try it at a feast when it was served to others instead. Putting the thought aside for the time being, as there was nothing I could do about it, I thought back to the other notable event. With the way I was training for the past few months after getting my pride torn to shreds by so many consecutive enemies, I was slowly refining my combat techniques against Hakuryu. The rare time that Dad joined me for practice, I found him to be the perfect partner for sparring, as our fighting styles were the complete opposite of each other. His was focused heavily on defense and waiting for the perfect chance to strike at an opening, while mine was focused on offense and making the openings I wanted to exploit by force. The two styles meshed perfectly, as it allowed us to have longer, drawn-out fights that would have been over much quicker against other opponents. The bonus when we got to spar was that I was able to spend some time with Dad, as he was swamped in work almost constantly these days and there was no end to the number of documents he had to sign. Speaking of the spars between the two of us, I lost. I didn't lose occasionally, or just often, but every single time. While I could hold my own and even beat others outside of the executives that served directly under Dad, I could only wonder if I would ever catch up to the skill levels of those who were teaching me. The gap was closing little by little with each training session, but just because I was getting better didn't mean that those around me weren't doing the same. I saw each of the key Jin, or at least those who fought with melee weapons, and Dad as a goal to strive for and not as something impossibly above me. With this mindset, it became easier to push myself even harder each and every day as I knew that eventually, I would be able to catch up to them, or at least I hoped so. Rimuru's POV. With the day having finally come where the delegates from Eurasania were to arrive, I was waiting at the entrance of the town with several other people, waiting for them to appear. I was currently in my slime form, resting in Shun's arms. Katarina was in her cat form, standing on the shoulders of Shuna. Finally, Yom and his group, along with Rigard and the other goblin chiefs, were also in attendance. While a number of people were missing, there was a large enough group of higher-ranking individuals to show that we weren't taking this meeting lightly. Watching the cleared area in front of us, it didn't take long for a group of highly decorated carriages, being pulled by thunder tigers, to appear. The sight was certainly impressive, as it showed off the military strength that they were capable of. I couldn't help but to marvel at the display a little as they continued to approach us. This sure is a demon lord's envoy. This is nothing compared to your glorious light, Sir Rimuru. Taming such beasts is nothing more than a bluff, Shun replied to my comment, completely sure that she was spouting facts. Katarina jumped into the conversation as well, using thought communication, her preferred method when in her cat form. Shun, they are clearly quite strong. I wouldn't say that this display is not impressive. Shun, unable to keep quiet, answered. Look at all those decorations. They would be useless in a battle. They aren't for battle. Things do have other purposes than for combat, you know, I said, while shaking my head. That said, the decorations are nothing compared to what our resident craftsmen can do. We could run laps around what we are seeing right now. Kaijin and his brothers, who had made it to the entrance while we waited, thanked me for the compliment, even as the carriages drew ever closer. The first carriage was decorated the most extravagantly out of them all, and it quickly became clear why as the people inside stepped out. When they came to a stop in front of us, two women jumped out of the lead carriage and looked at us. The first one was a young lady with long white hair, along with cat-like ears and a tail. There was a ferociousness around her that suggested she was a battle-hardened leader. The second lady was just as stunning, with black and gold hair and snake-like eyes. She seemed graceful at first, but her cold-hearted glare seemed to freeze the very air around her. Both ladies were strong magin that rivaled Phobio in terms of magicules alone, and this gave me a good idea about who they were. A pleasure to meet you, Lord of the Great Forest of Jura. I am Alvis, one of the 3 lycanthropes serving Demon Lord Carrion, the lady with black and gold hair said. The second lady didn't give such a nice greeting. I see no need for formal greetings. I spent all of this time traveling, wondering what type of monster could lead the Jura forest, only to see that it is a slime. Everyone here must truly be cowards. This is an outrage. Enough, Sophia. Such behavior brings only shame to Lord Carrion, Alvis spoke up, seeming to try and calm the situation only to be cut off. Enough from you, Alvis. How dare you order me around when they associate not only with dwarfs, but also humans? Those weak and cowardly beings. They are a disgrace to all monsters. I had a pretty good idea about what was going on, as Carrion knew I was a slime before agreeing to the sending of envoys, so there was no reason for Sophia to pick that of all things to complain about. While I couldn't confirm my suspicion so quickly, I knew the best way to do so and decided to act on it. I turned to Yom, catching a glimpse of Katarina's confused face while doing so, before speaking up. Hey Yom, are you just going to let her diss you like that? Aren't you mad that she is trying to pick on you? Why don't you show her what you are capable of? Yom was clearly taken aback by this sudden suggestion. Wait, but I thought you said we shouldn't fight. Hey, they are the ones picking the fight. Who are we to back down from such taunts? Show them that humans aren't as weak as they think, I responded, waving him forward even as his group cheered him on as well. With the extra prompting, Yom finally stepped up and took out his Dragon Slayer great sword, getting ready to fight after I promised that I had plenty of healing potions if he got hurt. I was curious to see how he would perform, as he was put through the training with Hakuryu and survived it, which is no easy feat. Hey Dad, what is going on? They are supposed to be allies, so why are you trying to fight them? Katarina asked, still confused by the sudden turn of events. Don't worry, it won't escalate. At least I don't think it will. They are just testing us a little. If it gets out of hand then you can— Oh no, I responded, but was stopped as Shun suddenly handed me over to Shuna. I will not stand by and let you insult Lord Rimuru like this. Since we have gotten permission to fight, allow me to be your opponent. Shun yelled out while walking forward, and even going so far as to plant her sword into the ground as if in declaration saying she wouldn't be using it. At this new development, Alvis could only sigh and tell another lycanthrope to take on Yom in Sophia's place. This only confirmed my suspicions more as I watched on as the fight slowly started to unfold. The fight between Shun and Sophia was a brawl of raw strength as they tore through the forest, while the other between Yom and a lycanthrope named Grucius was a fight of skill. Katarina's POV. While the fight between Shun and Sophia was interesting and it did demonstrate some skill behind the attacks, on the outside, it was a brawl. They were tearing the forest up all around them, destroying and even uprooting trees as they crashed into them or used them as weapons. I was a little annoyed at the unrestrained damage to our surroundings, but I was also sure the area would be cleared eventually for further development. While the fight of the 2 strong women was interesting, I instead found my attention drawn to the fight between Yom and Grucius. It was the first time that I had come across someone who used multiple weapons like I did, and I was curious as to how our 2 styles of fighting would be different. Just as there are numerous styles of fighting with a single sword, I imagined that the same could be said for fighting with 2 swords. As the 2 battles picked up their pace, I wasn't disappointed in what I was seeing. Yom was using his strength to swing around his massive sword with ease, his movement boosted by the exo-armor he was wearing. The armor was strong enough to deflect most attacks and had the bonus of being not only light, but also enhancing the wearer's abilities. With the combination of skill and gear, Yom was holding his own against Grucius, who used his greater speed and mobility to move around Yom, looking for weak spots to attack. He even went so far as to throw his 2 swords at Yom in an attempt to catch him off guard. It was a move I wasn't expecting to happen, but Yom took it in stride as he dodged them and moved into attack himself. With both sides closing in on one another, Grucius dodged Yom's attack and slid underneath his legs before standing back up and catching the weapons as they curved back around and landed in his hands once more. I was curious about how he managed to get them to return to him, but now wasn't the time to ask as the battle continued between both sides. With Yom slamming his sword down towards Grucius once more, the attack was blocked as Grucius crossed both his weapons above him, catching the great sword before it could hit. The battle held my interest as I tried my best to understand the fighting styles of both sides, occasionally getting distracted by the chaos of Shen's fight that went on nearby. The fights escalated a little when Shen blocked a lightning-based attack from Sufia and charged up a massive magic bullet to fire back in return. Sufia, for some reason, was just standing there wanting to take it head-on. It was an insane idea to start with, and it only became more insane as Shen increased the strength of the attack over time. Eventually, Alvis stepped in between Shen and Sufia, stopping the fight instantly as she asked Sufia if she was satisfied. Taking a moment to realize what was happening, I finally understood what Dad said earlier about them testing us. The lycanthropes worked on the law of all monsters, that the strong rule the weak, so they must not have wanted to ally with us if we were weak. It was a bizarre idea to me, as it never crossed my mind that someone had to be strong in order to be a friend, but others obviously thought differently. With the fighting settled, and our people being accepted as worthy of being allies, things quickly settled down. There was a small problem with Shen being unable to dispel the massive magic bullet she had created, which scared nearly everyone present, but it was quickly resolved when Dad swallowed it up with gluttony. With the greeting settled and both sides having calmed down, with the lycanthropes being impressed that Dad could dispel something so powerful so easily, we all started to head towards the city. I was still in my cat form as I didn't want to get dragged into politics, but I did hear my name mentioned once or twice as we walked, presumably so that I would be recognized by our visitors. With a feast being thrown to welcome our new guests, most of the lycanthropes were grouped in a single large room to eat, while Alvis and Sufia sat in a more private room with Dad to talk about the future. I was supposed to join them for dinner, but I instead decided to eat with everyone else. There were two reasons. 1, I didn't want to deal with the politics, and 2, I wanted a chance to talk with Grucius. My attempts to learn many different combat styles didn't stop when I learned a single style for a specific weapon set. It didn't take long to locate him in the crowds, as he was sitting and talking with Yom and his group, which was quite loud. Shifting into my lycanthrope form for the conversation, I walked over to their table. "Hey!" I offered the simple greeting with a welcoming smile. The fight between the two of you was something to watch earlier. Grucius, clearly confused, looked up at me while responding. "Hello. You saw the fight? I don't seem to recall you being there to watch." That is because I was the cat on Shuna's shoulders. I was wondering if you would be willing to train with me, to teach me your fighting style while you are here. You are the first person I have seen who uses two weapons like I do, and that has made me curious. I found myself a seat nearby and settled into it as I talked, wanting to let everyone feel more at ease. "Princess, does Lord Rimuru know about you asking this?" Yom spoke up after listening to me, clearly concerned about the proposal. Grucius's reaction to the question was giggle-worthy as he looked at me shocked. "Princess? I am so sorry, I didn't recognize you, Lady Katarina. Please, just call me Katarina. I don't like formal titles. So, what do you think about sparring with me? I would love to see if there are ways I could refine my style even more than it currently is." Waving off his concerns about being formal with me, I went back to the topic I wanted answered, even if I did ignore Yom's question. Grucius, for his part, gave my suggestion some real thought before answering, clearly understanding that he couldn't accept the request rashly. "If Lord Rimuru is okay with it, then I would be willing to spar with you," he finally answered. "Fair enough, we can talk about it more at a later time then, when everyone is rested and has some free time." With a goodbye wave, I transformed into my cat form once more and couldn't help but to laugh at the shocked expressions of those who saw it. The shock wasn't from the transformation itself, but a combination of my form shrinking considerably into a form that was worse for battle, the opposite of lycanthropes, and a few recognizing my race. I suppose if a shadow panther appeared out of nowhere in front of you when they are supposed to be some of the rarest monsters ever, and even considered extinct, it would be a surprise. Walking towards the room that Dad, Alvis, and Sufia were in, I quietly walked inside and looked around. Alvis and Sufia, for their part, were transformed into forms I hadn't seen before and were drinking something I had never seen before. For the moment, no one realized that I had walked in, but I soon ruined that peace. Sufia, in her lightning tiger form, was laying down and allowing her tail to flick back and forth behind her lazily. While normally this wouldn't have been a problem, for some reason, my instincts kicked in and I tried to pounce on the tip of her tail. It was a playful pounce, little more than me play hunting as I pounced and batted at the tail for a few seconds. "Cat! What do you think you are doing?" Dad spoke up when he noticed me, clearly mortified that I was playing with Sufia's tail. I didn't think I was doing anything bad, but I also wasn't really thinking about it carefully. I wanted to play, as I hadn't had a chance to have a lot of fun lately due to the increased training I was putting myself through, and this moment made it impossible to ignore any longer. Sufia, for her part, just laughed. "Ha ha ha. It's fine, Lord Rimuru. I don't mind, and it looks like she is having fun. She reminds me of when we were younger, always climbing on and playing with Lord Carrion when he had some spare time to indulge us." Alvis spoke up as well with a wide smile as she remembered a past memory. "Sorry, Dad." Looking at Sufia and Alvis as they defended me, I couldn't help but to try and push my luck. They said it was okay, so maybe. I was speaking to all three of them, wondering if I could get away with playing just a little more. Dad just sighed deeply as he approved of my playful antics, even as I saw his smile. It was clear that he was happy I was having fun, but I also knew he was embarrassed by my actions. Sufia, seeing this, turned back to look at me and gave a little nod saying that I could play to my heart's content. I was more than happy to oblige and went back to play hunting her tail as it moved around a little more actively than before. With the issue of my sudden appearance and playful antics being dealt with, the three of them went back to talking about various things, such as trading and general policies between our two nations. After some time had passed, I was starting to get tired from my play hunting and finally pounced on Sufia's tail, leaving it trapped underneath my small paws. With a satisfied nod and a wide yawn, I started walking towards Dad, thinking to take a nap next to him while the conversations continued. While walking past Sufia, I noticed a bowl of an amber drink in front of her, and deciding to tempt fate, I quickly stole a taste of it. The drink itself was really good, however, the aftertaste that hit me instantly made me swear to never drink it again. I didn't even know what the drink was before knowing I didn't like it. "What is that?" "It's sweet, but the taste once the sweet disappears is gross." I spoke my thoughts as I curled up into Dad's lap, and my sudden statement made all three of them laugh. Once Dad had calmed down a little from my sudden outburst, he spoke up. "That is alcohol, and you are still far too young to drink it. I am actually glad that you don't like it, as it means you won't try to drink it even when no one is watching you." With a soft chuckle and a shake of his head, he explained the drink to me. "It can be an acquired taste, but your dad is right about you being too young to drink it." Alvis said this while drinking from a barrel of the stuff. "That won't be a problem, I will stick to water and juice." With a soft purr as I was pet, I stated my decision, and had no intention to change it any time soon. With everyone laughing at my expense, I could only laugh with them. I understood why they were laughing, and it was funny to think about after the fact. Negotiations quickly wrapped up, and everyone headed off to where they would be staying for the night, including both Dad and myself. The envoys stayed for several days after the initial meeting and slowly started to learn about our city and many of the techniques that were being used, which helped push our quality of life to much higher standards than would be expected. When Sufia and Alvis left with many of the lycanthropes that came with them, there were still a good amount that stayed behind. Their orders were to learn about our specialized techniques so that they could bring them back home to Eurasania in a sort of cultural exchange. Grucius was one of the people who stayed behind, and he joined the city guard. I was glad that he was staying, as it meant I could spend more time learning from him, and with him joining the guard, it meant he would often be at the training fields. With the combination of him staying longer and training being mandatory for all guards, it would give me plenty of chances to spar with him as the days passed. He wasn't as strong as Phobio was, but in a match of pure swordsmanship, he was able to give me a good sparring partner. With his experience covering for his lack of raw strength, I was more than happy to learn from him. Third-person POV. King Gazelle could be seen sitting at a round table that comprised of his closest advisors. While the atmosphere was relaxed as they went over various developments in the Kingdom of Dworgen, there was one topic that would have to be considered carefully. Gazelle was the first to speak up about the topic, it having been left for last due to the care needed when dealing with it. Now then, the last thing on our agenda today is the visit to Dworgen by Rimuru. While I don't expect any trouble, I still want to make sure that everything is in place for his arrival. The guards have already been briefed on his arrival, and everything is in place to make sure everything goes smoothly, Dorf said, as he looked down at the notes provided to everyone. Henrietta stepped up next to give her report. Our spies are keeping up constant surveillance to make sure no would-be assassins try anything funny. Our defenses are solid, and I can't imagine any outside force being able to disrupt the meeting, Jane answered. As each person gave their report, Gazelle nodded thoughtfully as he considered the impact the upcoming meeting would have on world politics. Chapter 12.5 Holiday Special. Katarina's POV. I woke up to a chill in the air. The cold air didn't affect me, but it was still significant as the temperature of the house was noticeably colder than it should have been. I shook off my drowsiness and got dressed in some of the winter clothing that was prepared ahead of time, ready for the day ahead. The clothing consisted of my normal shirt and pants, but a large fur-lined coat that reached down towards my knees was added on top. The fur was collected from the Tempest star wolves during the summer when they were shedding like mad. The fur was ultra soft because of this, and it was almost as amazing as snuggling into Ronga's floof. Almost, but not quite. Stepping downstairs, I was shocked by the quietness that permeated the air. I knew Dad wasn't in his room as I checked on my way down, and he wasn't in the kitchen either like normal to make us food. His absence was startling and worry-inducing. I had to take a few deep breaths to calm down before thinking clearly once more. Great Sage, where is Dad? I asked mentally. The reply came instantly. Master is currently just outside of the house, buried in a snow pile. With this information, I wasted no time and rushed outside. Looking around, and with Great Sage's help, I quickly located the correct snow pile and tried to figure out a way to get Dad out. Why doesn't he just use fire to melt his way out? I wondered. The idea hasn't crossed his mind yet, and he is playing it off as if he is enjoying being stuck, Great Sage answered. I could almost swear that I heard exasperation when the answer came, and I couldn't help but to agree. With a deep sigh, I ignited a fireball in my hand and tossed it at the snow pile, watching it melt under the sudden heat. With Dad being immune to heat, it wasn't an issue about hurting him, and I decided that it was the quickest way to get him free. Once he jumped free, I instantly started to scold him for making me worry. What do you think you were doing? Do you know how worried you made me when I couldn't find you? I'm sorry. I just couldn't help myself but to jump inside of the snow when I saw it on my way home from the office. He laughed it off for the most part as something that wasn't a big deal. Sighing, I crossed my arms. Next time this happens, I will freeze you in a block of ice and you can figure your own way out. With the warning issued, I stomped back inside without waiting for a response, more than ready for breakfast. While I wasn't the best cook, far from it in fact, I had been taking cooking lessons from Shuna. I might have forced Dad to join me at the lessons as well whenever we had some free time together, as I didn't want him to rely on others for meals all the time. The meal was simple with just eggs, toast, and jelly, but it was the simple meals that I tended to enjoy the most. There was enough flavor to enjoy the food, but not so much that it overwhelmed your taste buds. By the time I had finished cooking breakfast for two, Dad had made it inside of the house and recovered from the shock of my earlier warning. I was hoping he would take it to heart and set the table with our breakfast as if nothing had happened in the first place. We ended up eating our breakfast in silence, which was a drastic change from the normal small talk we have that held no real meaning. The silence to me was oppressing, so I decided to do something about it. In return for making me worry so much today, you have to spend the entire day playing with me, I said in such a way that left little room for argument. Dad, for his part, shifted in his chair before answering my demand. I said I was sorry. Is that not enough? Besides, there is so much work to do around the city with the snow covering the roads. We can clear the roads while we play. I pouted a little and gave the best "you are making me sad" impression I could muster up, attempting to get him to agree. Don't be sad, he said in a panicked voice. Of course we can spend the whole day playing together, but first we should help clear off some of the snow that is covering the city. Instantly brightening up, I nodded quickly several times. Deal. This is my first time ever seeing snow, so I want to enjoy it. With a wide smile and quick movements, the table was soon cleared off and the dishes cleaned. Let's go. I want to build a castle of snow like in the fiction books I have been reading, I continued even as I dashed for the front door. Wait, slow down, Kat. Dad shouted from behind, but I was already gone. While I normally try to stay away from using the skills I received from Dad because I felt like I didn't deserve them, today was another story. Activating gluttony once I reached the main street, I started to run down it, eating up all the snow that covered the roads around me. It sort of felt like I was cheating, but on the bright side, I was able to collect a lot of snow to use for the castle I planned to build. Oh, there is Benimaru melting the snow with his fire, and Yom shoveling it manually, I thought to myself as I ran by. She is awfully energetic for it being so cold, and for how much work needs to be done, Benimaru said as I passed by him. Yom answered the comment as he was standing nearby. She is a kid, and look at how much snow she is clearing for us as well. You won't hear me complain about that. With a soft chuckle and a shake of his head, Benimaru agreed that he was glad for the help. I didn't pay them much attention as I continued down the road, wishing everyone I saw a good morning as I passed by. After a few minutes of running, I found myself at the edge of the town. Having stopped to catch my breath, I turned around to admire my handiwork. I wonder if I managed to collect enough snow? Maybe I should clear off some of the other roads as well to make sure. I wasn't really speaking to anyone in particular, but I did see Dad finally catch up to me. He landed next to me with a soft crunch of snow underfoot as he had to fly to catch up to me. At least I left him an obvious trail to follow. Isn't that nice of me, I thought, grinning mischievously. I finally caught up to you. Also, you did a good job clearing one of the major streets, as there is hardly any snow left on the main road that you ran down, Dad complained, then instantly praised me afterward. I found the sudden shift in attitude a little confusing, but he was giving me head pats, so I chose to ignore everything and enjoy the moment instead. Leaning into him a little, a soft purr could be heard in the crisp morning air, lingering for several seconds after we finally stepped apart. Looking up at Dad, I jumped up a few times in excitement, unable to contain myself any longer. Since I did such a good job, does that mean we can play now? I have the perfect clearing for a castle that won't affect the city. My energy seemed to be a little infectious, as Dad smiled widely and nodded at my question. Sure, we can play together, just like I promised. I will help too. Great Sage added. Really? Yay! You can help with the design, so the castle doesn't come crashing down on us then. With the addition of one more person to our group, I was looking forward to the day all the more. With a wide smile and my tail flicking back and forth happily, I pulled Dad along with me into the forest towards a nearby clearing. While we quickly set about clearing the area a little to make a good solid base to build on top of, I was thinking about something else entirely. I should think of a name, or nickname, or something to call Great Sage. She probably doesn't mind just being called by the skill name, but she helps us so much, I think she deserves more. I will talk to her about it later tonight. The day mostly passed in a blur. I managed to use my skills to create snow bricks, and with the help of Dad and Great Sage, we built an amazing castle that was big enough to walk inside of. It wasn't a full-size castle, but it still had a decently sized room with 2 ice thrones sitting at the end of it. Admittedly, that was the only room in the entire castle, as we couldn't make it any bigger without risking it collapsing on top of us. While we were building the castle, we were visited by several groups of people, from the goblin riders, executives, and even a handful of humans. I was a little surprised by how many visitors there were, as I chose a spot away from the main pathways leading to and from the city. The influx of people coming to see us gave me the bright idea to build a wall around the small castle, and its use would come into play later once we were ready. After a quick lunch, things finally quieted down, letting Dad and I work together to add the finishing touches to the clearing we had claimed in the name of the Snowy Empire, population 2, and 1 sentient skill. The following afternoon would rank among my top 3 most fun experiences ever, right up there with the visit to the lake and playing with my big sister. Whenever Gobta came by again after his patrol, I launched several snowballs at him, hitting him square in the face. His expression alone nearly killed me by making me laugh so hard. The peace wouldn't last long after such a declaration of war, however. Gobta managed to round up several goblin riders to lay siege to our newly built fort. Siege! Things soon devolved into an all-out snowball fight between our two sides as they tried to invade the castle we had spent so much time building. "I will give you this one chance to surrender peacefully and come out," Gobta yelled as we watched them surround us. I couldn't help but to pick up several snowballs as Dad answered them. "You will have to take this castle over our freezing bodies." "You heard him. We will fight to the last person to hold this castle, in the name of the Snowy Empire." I let the declaration stand as both Dad and I launched several snowballs at the invaders. The fight lasted for well over an hour. The wall held thanks to the thick layer of ice covering the outsides, an idea courtesy of Great Sage. But even with the walls to protect us, it was still hard to keep the invaders at bay. There were 10 hobgoblins going against the 2 of us currently, and they would occasionally get fresh troops as they rotated in from their daily duties. "These gates have never fallen before, and they will not fall to the likes of you now," I yelled out as another volley of snowballs arched up towards where I was standing on the wall. One of the invaders answered my words with a simple command. "Charge!" With our enemy closing in rapidly, we put up a fierce defense and eventually pushed them back away from the walls. Snowballs were flying, snow was being dumped on those trying to scale the walls, and maybe a little freezing cold water was sprayed as well. I blamed that last idea on the boiling oil that I had read about. Around the 2-hour mark, our reinforcements finally arrived. The look of pure terror on the hobgoblins' faces as Benimaru, Shun, and Hakuru sped into the conflict was priceless. The brutal defense quickly turned into a massacre, with victory being handed to the defenders. Benimaru and the others even played along with everything too. Benimaru rushed into the fray with an armful of snowballs, Hakuru ran towards the enemy with a wooden sword, and Shun was Shun. She ran into the fight with one massive snowball that was big enough to bury any poor soul unfortunate enough to be hit by it, and then she didn't know what to do after throwing her only weapon. Benimaru, Shun, and Hakuru kneeled in front of the castle gates once the invaders were run off, and Benimaru spoke for all 3 of them. "We have come to the rescue of the Snowy Empire, my lord." "Perfect timing, Sir Benimaru, Lady Shun, and Sir Hakuru. Truly, you have lived up to your titles as Knights of the Kingdom," Dad proclaimed, and shortly after, we were all laughing together. The 3 of them eventually admitted to coming to get us for dinner but couldn't resist getting in on the action a little bit while they were here. I wonder how I will manage to top today? I had so much fun, and it was great to spend so much time with Dad and the others. "Let's leave the castle up over winter. We can use it again in the future to play some more," I said, even as I jumped down from the wall into Benimaru's arms, the gate being made of snow naturally not opening. Dad, for his part, floated down gracefully to land next to me. "Agreed. Shall we go eat?" Taking one look back at the castle, or more accurately the imposing walls as they stood taller than twice my height, I smiled before finally turning away and walking with the others towards the city. I knew there would be more fun to be had, and the name of the Snowy Empire would live on throughout the winter. The day ended with me being completely wiped out from playing all day. I managed to sleep amazingly, although it didn't feel like I slept any time at all, as I didn't have a single dream to keep my sleeping mind company. It was a strange feeling to be sure, but it was welcome over the occasional nightmare I still had. The only explanation I could think of for the lack of dreams was that I was so worn out, I didn't have any energy left to dream with. As for the name for Great Sage, I did manage to think of one, but ended up being too nervous to ask about it for the time being. Rimuru's POV. The winter has been one of my better times in recent memory. With no pressing issues needing to be dealt with, I have finally been able to spend a good amount of time with Kat, and she has been enjoying the winter to the fullest. I was lost in my thoughts, again, while doing the paperwork that spread over most of my desk. Thankfully, with the weather making major construction hard to do, the number of papers I had to sign also decreased significantly, which led to me having more free time to be a proper parent. As the month of December was ending, there was one last thing I thought of doing to make this year one to remember. Knowing that it was something that Katarina would enjoy greatly, I sent out a telepathic message. I would like all executives to meet after lunch today in the meeting room. Now the only thing left to do was to decide on a present. Naturally, the event I was planning on was Christmas. With the snow still falling, it was the perfect weather to stay inside, open presents, and just generally be with your family. Or it's the perfect chance to spoil one's daughter while pleading innocent, Great Sage chimed in. Did you just claim I was spoiling Kat? I asked. Of course not, Great Sage replied. I could have sworn that you did. It was your imagination. TSK, fine. Have it your way. If you would please give Katarina a large amount of Magisteel as my gift to her, I would greatly appreciate it, Great Sage requested. Now who is spoiling her? You know what, never mind. In that case, I will ask Kurobe to forge her a new sword. I could almost feel the smirk and hear the laughter from Great Sage as I talked with her, but the presents were decided on, so the only thing left to do was to make sure they were ready on time. With it still being an hour before lunch, I decided to head over to the workshops to talk to Kurobe about the sword I wanted him to make. Kurobe, can I talk to you for a moment? I asked as I walked into his workshop. It took him a minute to get to a good stopping place in what he was working on, but soon enough, we were sitting down and having a nice chat. What can I do for you, Lord Rimuru? Kurobe asked, clearly curious about my sudden visit. With a calming smile, I pulled out a chunk of pure Magisteel. I would like you to forge a pure Magisteel sword for Katarina, one like mine. Oh? Are you sure you want me to make it instead of Lady Katarina herself? He asked the obvious question about the request. Nope, it is a present for her. I can't very well make her craft her own present. With a little shake of my head, I explained the situation. With me explaining why I needed him to make it, he was quick to agree to the request. I was looking forward to something spectacular, and he promised to put his heart and soul into the crafting of the sword. I am glad that went so smoothly. I already have the Magisteel for Great Sage present to her, so now I must wait for Kurobe to finish. I was satisfied with what had been accomplished, and I got back to the office just in time for the meeting as well. Taking a seat in my chair, I slowly looked around at everyone in attendance to build up the anticipation, before finally saying a few words that would bring both excitement and confusion. Let's hold a Christmas festival. Rigard was the first to speak up, his excitement mirroring a kid in a candy store. Yes. Let's hold another festival. So Rimuru, what is this Christmas festival? Shuna, ever the diligent one, asked the question on everyone's mind. Well, it is a time to celebrate with those close to you as the year comes to an end. You give gifts to people to show them how much you care about them. I wasn't sure how to explain it, but I hoped I got my point across anyway. Shun stood up to speak next, even if she did throw her chair backward while doing so. That sounds wonderful. We should get started on the preparations right away. Yes, I agree. So Rimuru, can you give us an idea of what this festival is supposed to look like? Shuna asked, even while nodding at Shun's suggestion. I couldn't help but to smile at the sight of their excitement. I happily showed them images of what I remembered from my other world and explained some of the customs that went along with the holiday as well. That afternoon, after the meeting ended, the town was much livelier than normal as people started to get ready. It would mark the start of a new holiday here in Tempest, and everyone was on board with it. With the handful of days we had to prepare, things turned out shockingly well. Shuna made modest outfits styled after Santa Claus, and Rigard took control of the decoration along with Lilina, a goblin lord. Everyone else helped where they could, and the scene on the promised day looked shockingly familiar to what I was used to. With the sword I requested ready as well, the only thing left to do was to sneak it into Katarina's room after she fell asleep. I had already told her to expect presents, so it wouldn't come as a surprise when she woke up to them. Third-person POV. It would seem that Tempest is having some sort of festival where they hand out gifts to others, Guy said while watching a crystal ball of the city. Velzard, who was sitting nearby, could only sigh.
Are you really spying on her again?
That said. Gifts, HM? Maybe I should pass along the book that Milim gave to me for safekeeping. Guy smirked at the offhand comment of him spying. If you don't want me to watch over her this way, we could give her the bracelet as well, as a present from the both of us. Your older sister did give it to you just for that reason after all. I nearly forgot about that, it has been so long since she gave it to me to hold on to. Yes, I think I will give that to her as well. Then you won't have to watch through that ball, and we can make sure she is doing okay through the connection that the bracelets have instead. Velzard was quick to take up the idea and stood up to leave. Headed to Tempest already? I guess it has been hard for you to stay away from your niece after all. Dancing on the line of life and death, Guy teased Velzard openly. The only response to this teasing was Velzard blushing softly as she quickly turned around and headed out of the room. I'll be back later, don't wait up for me tonight. Katarina's POV. The night after the Christmas festival was peaceful. Not a thing in the house stirred, not even a mouse. I ended up waking up several hours before the sun was to rise over the horizon, but I couldn't figure out what had woken me up. There were presents at the foot of my bed already, but no one else around that would give an indication as to what happened. Great Sage, do you know what woke me up? Was it the person placing the presents in my room? I knew Dad would be asleep right now, but Great Sage was always active and watching to make sure nothing unexpected happened while we weren't paying attention. The presents have been there for a few hours now. I am unsure as to what caused you to wake up, Great Sage replied. Thank you, sorry for disturbing you. It was probably nothing. You didn't disturb me at all. Sleep well, little one. With a soft sigh, I fell back asleep, this time not waking up until the sunlight was arching through my window and landing straight on top of me. The earlier disturbance was forgotten as I quickly got out of bed and went to the presents in my room. I couldn't have asked for anything better. I shouted out in excitement as I saw the new sword and a king's ransom worth of magisteel. Dad walked into my room after knocking and looked down at me on the floor. If you shout any louder, you will wake up the entire city. Thank you for the gifts. I was overjoyed at what I had been given, and I could only repay it with words and a big hug. Both of you, thank you. I added mentally. You're welcome, Cat, both Dad and Great Sage responded at the same time. I'm glad that you like the gifts so much. I was a little worried you wouldn't like the sword, as you already have weapons that you like to use. Dad scratched the back of his head while saying this, seemingly a little embarrassed. I don't like it. I love it. You know that I have been trying to learn several different fighting styles, so having a new weapon to practice with is amazing. I was beaming with excitement at this point, the love and thought put into the gifts overwhelming me a little. I tried my best to blink away my tears but ended up having to wipe them away with the sleeve of my shirt instead. The action didn't go unnoticed, as I was soon being held in Dad's embrace. There is no need for you to cry, Great Sage whispered. Are you okay, Cat? Dad asked. Giving a shake of my head, I looked up into Dad's eyes. I'm fine, I am crying from being so happy. I did eventually manage to calm down enough for us to eat breakfast. We mostly talked about what my plans were for all the magisteel I had received, and honestly, I didn't know what I was going to do with it. There was enough to craft weapons for a small army, as the pile I woke up to in my room was only part of what I was given. The rest of the magisteel was given to me afterward, as Dad was worried about its weight being an issue for the second floor of our house to support it all. I will have to make something for Dad with the magisteel I was given as a thank you. I wish I could make something for Great Sage as well, but she doesn't have a physical form, so she doesn't need any physical items. I was thinking of all the different items I could make to repay them as we walked to the office, but my thoughts would soon be interrupted as I noticed 2 more presents waiting on Dad's desk.
Oh, more presents. Did you get these for me as well?
I had already run over to the desk and started to look at them while I asked. After reading the words on the wrappings, I continued. Wait, Milim sent one of these. The other smaller one is from Aunt Veltz and Uncle Guy.
We know Milim, but who are Veltz and Guy?
And how did these presents get into my office? Dad asked suspiciously. Veltz and Guy are likely the true dragon, Frost Empress Velzard and her husband Guy Crimson, Great Sage provided helpfully to the 2 of us.
So Veldora's sister?
Do you mind if I examine them after you open the presents to make sure nothing sinister is going on, Cat? Dad asked as he walked over. I gave a quick nod and quickly opened the 2 items to see what lay inside. Sure, I don't mind at all. Now what did I get? Blacksmithing and Crafting from Beginner to Divine, by the Dark Blacksmith and the Void Princess. This book was co-written by a true dragon. That is so amazing. The book alone would be worth a fortune since a true dragon helped to write it, but there was also an inscription on the first page naming the book the first of only 3 copies. I had no intention of selling it, and with it being so rare, I was thinking it might be best to keep it a secret from the world at large in case someone tried to steal it from me. Analyze doesn't come up with anything notable with the book. It is imbued with magicules, which is probably why it is in such great shape, but other than that, it's a normal book. Dad spoke up as I was admiring some of the illustrations. Right, the second item is from Aunt Veltz and Uncle Guy. The packaging was quick to disappear as I looked down at a highly detailed bracelet that now lay on the desk in front of us. There was also a note along with it that I picked up to read. The dragons depicted on the bracelet represent the true dragon family. The bracelet is a sign that you have been accepted into the family as well. The cyan dragon represents Veldanava, the black and purple dragon is the Void Empress, the white dragon is Velzard, the red dragon is Velgrind, the black dragon is Veldora, the black and light blue dragon is the Void Princess and Spirit Empress, the pink dragon is Milim Nova, and finally the purple dragon is Gaia. I finished reading, looking at each expertly crafted dragon that was bound into the bracelet as a seamless whole. Dad took several minutes to speak up, and it got to the point where I wondered if he would speak at all. This bracelet is amazing. What little I can actually analyze about it shows that it mostly gives passive bonuses such as magicule suppression, long-distance communication between wearers, and emergency defensive functions in case the wearer is in danger. There is a lot more that I am being blocked from understanding, but from what little I have gathered, it could be extremely helpful. That said, there is one thing that bothers me.
What is bothering you about it?
I can see only helpful things when I examine it, I asked, waiting to put it on before I got an answer. It is the energy imbued into it. It is far more potent than normal magicules, and I imagine it could be deadly with its seemingly unpredictable nature. Dad's concern about the energy was something to take note of, but there was one thing he didn't know about. I reached out and picked up the bracelet, letting the energy flow into me slowly. It might feel strange to you, but it feels like the place I was born to me. I don't think it is dangerous, and if it is, then my body is accustomed to it, so there won't be any problems if I wear it. I wasn't about to toss away a present someone clearly worked extremely hard to make, so I slid it onto my wrist, only to be met with a gasp from Dad. What is wrong? I don't feel any negative side effects. In fact, I feel stronger. The bracelet disappeared when you put it on. I can no longer see it, he answered truthfully as he reached out to touch the area it was in. I can't feel it either. Strange. I'm not sure. Maybe it's a way to recognize other family members without singling someone out for wearing it. I asked curiously as I looked down at it. Either way, it doesn't matter, as the latch for the bracelet disappeared, so it's impossible to take off now, considering it is rated higher than a legendary piece of equipment. While I didn't think anything bad would happen by wearing it, I did have to admit it was a bit reckless to put it on without much thought on the matter. It was agreed that we would monitor it, and that great sage would continue to examine the bracelet through me to make sure there were no nasty surprises waiting for the future. With the holiday coming to an end and everyone calming down from the fun of celebrating, the city slowly went back to normal. No one was the wiser to the new piece of jewelry that was permanently on my wrist now, except for Dad and myself. Chapter 13 Dworgen. Rimuru's POV. Benimaru's group had returned to Tempest from their trip to Eurasania, and I had to admit that it was nice to have them back. It gave me peace of mind to have Benimaru back to help with the defense of the city if something major happened. I was sitting in the meeting room with Benimaru, Rigger, and Katarina as I was given their reports on the trip. I hoped that they didn't run into major trouble, but with how we had to fight to prove ourselves to the Eurasania envoys, I was expecting them to have at least run into a little trouble along the way. Benimaru was the first to give his report on what he thought of their military. Their military is highly trained, no doubt thanks to Carrion. I am uncertain if we could win without factoring in Carrion or yourself into the fight. I did get the chance to fight with Phobio, and easily won, but I fought Carrion afterward and I got the feeling that he was playing with me. Needless to say, I lost spectacularly against Carrion, though I couldn't use Hell Flare or other similar moves, he continued. I nodded a little as he finished his report and thought on his words for a second. They had good things to say about our own training as well. Also, what do you mean you fought Carrion? I couldn't stop myself from yelling those last few words. Dad, calm down, Katarina said, putting a hand on my arm. Benimaru, I hope Carrion took the sparring match well. He was more than happy to agree to the match, as it was all in good nature to test each other a little. There were no hard feelings before or after between either side, Benimaru answered quickly, no doubt seeing Katarina's interference as a saving grace. Rigger agreed with the assessment, so I decided to drop the topic for the time being, even if I was annoyed that Benimaru fought with Carrion when I told him specifically not to pick fights. Letting out a deep sigh, I calmed down a little and turned to Rigger for his report. Rigger's half of the trip was a lot more peaceful, thankfully. He painted a picture of a rich land that focused most of its wealth on the capital, but lacked the sophistication of our own building technology and crafting here in Tempest. It would give us something we could use for trade going forward, at least, now that we knew what they lacked. He went on to say that their agriculture was superb, considering the fertile lands and large open plains. I was interested in seeing if we could adapt some of their techniques for our own use to help with our food production in the future after hearing about what they had accomplished. We weren't starving, but we didn't have a lot of leftover food with which to experiment. We talked for a little while longer about what they saw, and I gave Benimaru a new idea for large-scale fights that consisted of taking out the enemy command structure to help destabilize their army. We also agreed that Rigger would lead the next trip to Eurasania, as it was deemed safe enough that we didn't need to worry about our people being attacked while visiting. With the next visit focusing on the agricultural side of things and the basics of the team to be sent agreed upon, I was just about to wrap up the meeting. I didn't know why Katarina joined the meeting, as she didn't say much during it and normally hated politics, but she spoke up before I could dismiss everyone. Benimaru, about that favor I asked of you. Katarina asked timidly, as if afraid of the answer to her own question. Benimaru, for his part, smiled and gave a small nod before responding. It's not that you are weak, especially after training with Lady Milim, but more so that there will always be someone stronger than you. I believe you could beat Phobio as you stand now in a serious fight. Thanks. The tension in Katarina's body slowly released as she took in his words. I guess that just means I need to keep training, so I don't fall behind everyone else. With those last few words said, and things set in stone for the future, the meeting was quickly wrapped up. It wasn't long before the trip to Dworgen would happen, and I would be relying heavily on Benimaru to keep Tempest safe in my absence. This was especially important as foreign visits would start becoming a normal thing going forward as we grew our influence. A couple of days later. It was finally the big day, the day when I would leave for Dworgen. I was dressed in my travel clothing along with Katarina as we headed outside to wait for the time we would leave. We didn't really have anything to do, as everyone else was running around in a tizzy trying to make sure everything was ready for us to depart. Kaijin and the dwarf brothers were also milling about, so we decided to go chat with them in the meantime while we waited. It was a relaxed conversation between everyone, mostly talking about the changes Tempest had gone through since they had arrived. I had to truly thank them for all the hard work they put in, as Tempest wouldn't be how it is today without all their effort. "Hey Kaijin, can I ask you something?" Katarina chimed in after a little while. Kaijin turned toward her and nodded. "Ask away, you know I am more than happy to answer any questions you might have." "I was wondering if you had a teacher, someone who taught you how to be the great blacksmith that you are today," Katarina asked, and I couldn't help but to be curious about the answer as well. Yes, I was taught by a human who goes by the name of Shin. I hear he works in Ingracia these days if you are interested in meeting him sometime," he said, before becoming lost in thoughts about the past. I decided to enter the conversation at this point. I was planning to head over to Ingracia after the visit to Dworgen, so maybe I will see about meeting him while I am there. The moment I said this, Katarina was tugging on my arm. "Take me with you. Please?" She was looking up at me with pleading eyes that I always found hard to resist. "You are going to teach the kids you talked about, right? Can I join the class as well? I want to see what being in school is like, too." "I will think about it, but I make no promises." I reached up and gave her head a few pats as I responded, thinking over whether I should accept her request. With the conversation coming to an end and everything being set for our departure, the only thing left to do was to walk through the town to the carriages that would carry us to Dworgen. The walk consisted of navigating streets so packed with people that it would have made our way hard, if not for the fact that everyone cleared a path while we walked. There was only one incident on our way to the carriages, and it consisted of a young goblin wanting to give us a charm, and a fox lycanthrope who had tried to escort her to me. They were caught by Sue as they tried to approach us. I had told him to bring them forward once he told me about it, and it was a welcome surprise. Katarina and I both accepted a good luck charm each that the little girl made, and the lycanthrope introduced herself as Fars, part of the city guard, while we were talking. Katarina seemed to take an interest in the lycanthrope during our brief conversation, and I was thinking it would be good for her to make new friends. I was interested to see how Fars would do in the future. It was obvious that Carrion had sent her as a separate person from the earlier envoy in an attempt to see how Tempest operated when we didn't know we were being observed. I didn't mind and welcomed all the help we could get, even if they did have an alternative reason for being here at the same time. I was thinking about talking Katarina into meeting with Fars later, as it might help to bring her out of her shell. Katarina might have seemed like an outgoing girl to most people in the town, but the reality was that she was still quite shy and would rarely start conversations herself with people she didn't know well. Shortly after the encounter, we were all loaded up onto the carriages with Katarina, Shun, Shuna, and myself in one, and Kaijin and the dwarf brothers in the second. The escort for the trip consisted of the goblin riders who were fitted in the latest equipment Tempest had to offer. Every single item was of unique grade, giving the sight of a well-equipped military. There wasn't much to do on the trip, as it would take us for days to reach Dworgen, and the only thing in between Tempest and Dworgen was the crews working on the road itself. I made sure to stop and thank the orcs for all the hard work they were putting into the project, and the level of skill they had developed was evident by how smooth the ride was. Katarina, for her part, spent most of the trip split between talking with those of us in the carriage with her and studying the book she got from Milim during Christmas. I had to admit that I was curious about what lay inside myself, but when I tried to look at it, nothing made sense. Katarina admitted that the book was enchanted somehow with a will of its own when I brought up the fact that I couldn't read it, and she recited a note that she found in the front of the book. "If you can read this, then you have been judged as worthy to learn the skills this book holds. A new chapter will be available after the previous ones have been mastered to a satisfactory degree." It was a straightforward message. If you weren't deemed worthy, then you wouldn't be able to read the book. How the book decided if you were worthy or not was beyond me, but it seemed like Katarina had already passed the beginner stage of the book, which didn't surprise me considering how long she had been practicing the craft already. I was curious to see what she could make once she reached the divine part of the book. I knew it would likely take a while for her skill level to increase far enough for the book to recognize her to that degree, though. In the meantime, I was proud that she could now craft unique equipment easily, as if it were common gear a normal adventurer would have. Katarina's POV. For days passed in a flash as I was in good company and had plenty to keep my mind occupied. I had managed to read the book Sis gave to me up until the point that it decided I needed to practice the earlier skills, and it gave me a lot to think about. Some of the things that caught my interest were the fact that there were both blessed and cursed items. While both were strong, the cursed items could make someone go insane or even kill them after prolonged use. Other things in the book mentioned different metal types I had never heard about, equipment rankings above legendary, and finally, how to enchant items with different effects. I knew it would all add up to being able to make the best items possible, but it was also clear that the amount of practice needed to put it all together would be immense. With the massive front gate of the armed nation of Dworgen opening for our arrival, I pulled myself from my thoughts to watch the show, and laughed quietly at the shock of the bystanders on both sides of the gate. I could tell that the big gate opening wasn't something that happened often, and it caught most people by surprise that it was opening for such a small group, in their own words. With it being my first time out of the Jura forest, or really my first time outside of Tempest itself, I was eager to see what a different nation looked like. My excitement for seeing new and interesting things wasn't overlooked by the people watching us as we stepped out of the carriage to greet the guards tasked with escorting us. They are opening the gate? They don't even do that for the royalty of smaller nations. To think that they sent a princess. It must be that lycanthrope's first time away from home, with how eager she looks. There were many more comments being directed toward our group, and after hearing them, I did my best to calm down a little. People eventually lost interest in us and went back to what they were doing as the dwarfs with us were greeted at the gate by a captain. "Hey, bro. It's good to see you doing well," the captain said while walking up to us. "Kaido. It's good to see you as well. It's been a blast working for Sir Rimuru, let me tell you," Kaijin spoke up as the two clasped hands. Kaido, as I now knew he was called, looked around a little. "Where is Sir Rimuru? I don't see him. He is a state guest, so we will need to give him a warm welcome." I barely suppressed a giggle as Dad just sighed and walked forward. "Kaido, it's me, Rimuru. Don't tell me you don't recognize me after that heart-to-heart we had last time." "Dad! Don't tell me you like men now." "Wait, you do, don't you?" I wasn't sure what the heart-to-heart statement meant, but I was hardly going to let this chance to tease him escape me. "What? No. Of course I don't," he said in a panic before quickly calming down again. "Nice to meet you, Kaido. I'm KatarinaTempest, daughter of Rimuru Tempest." I smiled widely as he slowly shook off his confusion just as the gate finished opening. "Nice to meet you as well, and welcome to both of you. I'll escort your group from here, so if you would follow me." He took it in stride after the initial shock wore off and went back to being serious, as his captain role required. The trip through the city itself was smooth, with onlookers staying clear of our path even as they watched. A few of us made some small talk with Kaido about our visit, and it quickly became clear that the number of guards we brought was indeed on the small side. The only saving grace was the equipment everyone was wearing and the wagons clearly being more advanced than what most people had. While the others were talking, I took the time to admire the city as we passed through the streets, the buildings being completely different from what I was used to in the forest. With most of the houses and shops being mined out of the mountain itself, stone was the dominant choice for the buildings. There was wood and some glass spread out through the buildings for decoration and support, but the craftsmanship that was shown focused mostly on the use of stone, with the rest looking like it was added afterward. I had less time to admire the nation than I would have liked, as our trip came to a sudden end at the steps of the castle. I was hoping we would have more time to explore later, but for now, it was time to dive into the world of politics. Something I didn't expect was that Dolph would be the one to greet us at the castle. He wasn't dressed in the armor I saw him in last time, which made it hard to recognize him for a second. I recognized a couple of other people from when they came to help with Charybdis, and all of them were dressed in more normal-looking clothing. They blended in extremely well with everyone else if you didn't know better, but that was probably due to the Pegasus Knights being a more secretive part of the Dworgen military. "Hello, Sir Rimuru, Lady Katarina. I am glad to see the two of you in good health," Dolph said as we walked up to him. I was glad that there was at least one person I recognized here, as it helped me to relax a little. With so many strangers around, and with so much attention on us, I couldn't help but to be a little tense, as I was unused to being scrutinized by so many people. "Hello, Sir Dolph. Thank you for inviting us today," Dad answered back. Dolph's face softened as he laughed softly. "There is no need for you to use so with me. I am just here to escort you to His Majesty, but before that..." Several men walked up as he was talking. "May I ask to hold your weapons during your visit?" The single request was enough to set me on edge again, even if I knew the reason for it. It wouldn't do well for armed people to meet with the king, lest one of them be an assassin. That said, I was immediately glad that I kept my weapons stored away in gluttony and not out in the open. With my weapons not being seen, no one asked me to hand them over, so I would at least have something to defend myself with if things went south by some unimaginable tragedy. I had also stored away the katana I got for Christmas, so if Dad needed a weapon as well, I could let him use it. Perhaps it was just me being paranoid, but I thought that one could never be too careful, even if we were guests here. With everyone being disarmed with little fanfare, outside of Shen making a big deal out of her own sword and the goblin riders being escorted away to take off their armor, we followed Dolph into the castle. My first thoughts upon entering the castle were that it was far too big. I could understand wanting to make a statement, but having grown up first in oppressing darkness and then in a small house in Tempest, I could say with confidence that something so grand wasn't to my taste at all. To put it elegantly, I didn't want to have to walk for 10 minutes just to get to the bathroom. While I openly admired the decorations on our walk to help pass the time, I noticed several people giving me weird looks as I did so. I didn't pay them much mind, as it wasn't my business what they were thinking, and since it was my first time here, I figured I had a right to be curious. The near-endless walk eventually came to an end as we were led into a room where King Gazelle sat waiting for us. "It's good to see you again, Rimuru. And of course you as well, Katarina." He spoke the moment we were in his sight. Dad seemed to relax a little at the informal greeting we got, and I was glad we didn't have to worry about formal titles. Having avoided as many meetings as possible before now, I had no idea what I was supposed to be doing. I took a seat next to Dad, and before I knew it, Shuna and someone else were talking about all sorts of things while we just sat there listening. The meeting soon ended without me saying a single word to anyone. There were several formalities tossed around and the mention of a royal dinner, but that was about it. The first meeting was more of a formality, it seemed, as very little was said between Gazelle, Dad, and myself. We were shown to our rooms afterward where we would wait until it was time to have dinner, and there wasn't much else that happened. I was glad to have a chance to rest for a little while before the dinner. There was the knowledge at the back of my mind that the dinner would be political hell, and I would have to watch how I acted and what I said. The dinner itself went without issue, thankfully, and the food was amazing to say the least. My stomach wasn't bottomless, but with how good the food tasted, I wished that it was. I mostly stayed quiet during the meal itself, as everyone seemed to be trying to play the political field as predicted, and that was something I had no hope of winning in. I mostly focused on the food in front of me and the small conversations around us, trying to understand what was going on in each conversation that could be overheard. I failed miserably. On the bright side, I didn't mess anything up that would alienate others against us, so I was counting that as a solid win in the political field. After dinner, Gazelle asked Dad if he had some free time, and curious, I listened in to see what was going on. I found it weird that he wanted to talk more after dinner, but with everyone else around, people were being a lot more formal than before, so it made sense to talk in a more relaxed environment. I have plenty of time, although. Dad turned to me and then looked at Shen. "Shen, why don't you escort Kat back to our room so she can get some rest?" I was confused by the sudden suggestion, as I had no issue with talking somewhere else myself. Wait, you don't want me to join the two of you? He only raised an eyebrow at me before responding.
Oh?
Here I thought you wanted to avoid politics. Plus, it is likely that the drink you don't like will be brought out. I wouldn't want to force you to drink it for courtesy's sake, but if you really want to. On second thought, I am quite tired and would like to get some rest. The answer was obvious. There was no way I was going to deal with both politics and that disgusting drink Dad called alcohol. Just don't forget to tell him about Sis while the two of you are talking. The mention of me having a sister piqued Gazelle's interest enough that he couldn't hide his reaction. I could only smile as I waved goodbye and left with Shen back toward our rooms. Shen, thankfully, didn't cause too much of a scene, as she was given the very important duty of protecting me, the princess. Rimuru's POV. I shook my head as I followed Gazelle toward a balcony overlooking a garden where we could talk. She is getting quite cheeky, I thought. She knew the mention of Milim would get Gazelle's interest enough for him to ask about it. I wonder if this is her revenge for excluding her from our little chat? Settling down into the seat that was offered to me, I signaled for Shuna to bring out the whiskey and brandy we had brought along with us on this trip. Alcohol would make talking easier, even if I couldn't get drunk off it, and it would be a good showcase of what we have to offer when it comes to trading. Well, to start with, I would like to thank you for pardoning Kaijin and the dwarf brothers. I am sure they're grateful for it as well, I said while we waited for the drinks. Gazelle chuckled a little and seemed to brush it off. I was planning to pardon them from the beginning, if I am being honest. It is good that they could go somewhere where their talent is being put to good use. Plus, I didn't want someone as strange as you wandering around my kingdom too freely. The drinks finally came out, and we each took a glass after Shuna had filled them up. Gazelle, for his part, instantly looked at the craftsmanship of the glass itself and the rune carved into the bottom. The glass used a small amount of magisteel to apply an antidote effect to anything poured into it. Is this one of Dord's creations? I am glad to see that they have been able to help you and yet still have the freedom all craftsmen should have. Gazelle activated the rune as he was speaking before taking a sip. This is amazing. Dolph was quick to accept, but Vaughn was just looking on confused, refusing by saying it was improper for him to accept. It took a little convincing, but the moment he tasted the drink, he did a complete turnaround and accepted it happily. Hey Dad, can you ask a favor for me? That depends on the favor you want me to ask. I want to train with some of the dwarfs. They have different tactics and fighting styles, so I want to experience it. Plus, I want to get some experience in a one versus group situation. Sigh. I will ask, but don't get your hopes up too high, okay? Okay. Thank you. Katarina cut the communication after I agreed to the request. I shook my head a little as I thought over what she had just said. Thankfully, the others were too distracted by the whiskey to notice my momentary lapse. I saw no downsides to the request as it stood, seeing as she would be training in a controlled environment, and the dwarfs would certainly give her a good challenge due to their unparalleled coordination within their squads. So, Rimuru. Let's get down to business. The first thing I would like to ask about is your second daughter, Gazelle suddenly spoke up after a minute of admiring the drink in his hands. I let out a little chuckle at his words and scratched the back of my head nervously, not sure how he would take the news. I would like to ask you a favor in return for answering you, as the answer by its nature is fairly long. Gazelle, for his part, just nodded in acceptance, motioning for me to continue, so I did. Katarina has expressed interest in training with some of your fighters, both to learn against a new style and to try out combat against greater numbers. I am hoping you could fulfill this selfish request of hers during our stay here. Vaughn was the one to speak up. Overseeing the military, it would fall under his jurisdiction. I see no problem with her training with us, and I would be happy to have someone new to train, so long as His Majesty agrees. I agree. I would be more than happy to let her train with some of our forces. I am curious to see how much she has improved since I last saw her as well, Gazelle responded, instantly accepting the request. With Katarina's request settled, I started with the explanation they were waiting for. Well, to start with, I'm not sure you can call her my daughter. As for who it is, her name is Milim Nova. Wait, you don't mean that Milim Nova, do you? Gazelle asked, the shock on his face being comical. Yes, Demon Lord Milim Nova, the Destroyer. The one and the same. It is a long story, so I had better start from the beginning, I said, before starting on an abbreviated story of how Katarina became the sister of the strongest Demon Lord. Once I finished, Gazelle was looking at me seriously, the implications running through his thoughts. Rimuru, I must ask. What do the true dragons and other demon lords think about Milim's declaration? I had to ask my trusty partner, Great Sage, for advice. Sage, how much should I reveal? I don't want to cause too much trouble by revealing information I shouldn't. The Great Sage replied, in my mind, I suggest keeping Veldora's acceptance quiet, as people still do not know you hold him. You can say that two beings you think are the Frost Empress and her partner have accepted Katarina as their own. You make a good point about Veldora. You are the best. I could have sworn I felt Sage blush after we finished talking, but that was something to worry about another time. Looking toward Gazelle, I took a steadying breath before answering, knowing that the information I was about to share would shake the world balance considerably. While I can't speak for all the true dragons or demon lords, I can speak for 3 people at least. The first is Demon Lord Carrion, who has accepted the information openly and has no problems with it. Additionally, we have opened negotiations for trade with Eurozania after our meeting with him. The other 2 people claim to be her aunt and uncle, under the names of Veltz and Guy. They sent her a present consisting of a bracelet representing many people that we know to be in the true dragon family. While I can't say for certain without meeting the 2 people in person, we believe that they are the Frost Empress, Velzard, and her partner, Guy Crimson. I was completely ignorant of the fact that Guy leads the Demon Lords at this point, so the news hit them a lot harder than expected. After I finished, Gazelle sat in his chair, completely frozen. It took 5 minutes for him to regain his composure, and in that time, I could only speculate about what caused such a reaction. I wouldn't have to wait long to learn why he was so shocked, when his composure was normally so unshakable. So, you are telling me the strongest true dragon alive right now and the leader of the Demon Lords have both accepted your daughter into their family? Not only that, but if the bracelet you mentioned is the one I think it is, then the acceptance is final, with no room for people to argue about it. He paused to gather his thoughts for a moment after saying this, before asking a question that seemed to hold more weight than any other. Did the bracelet consist of 8 dragons of different colors? Yes? How did you know? I was completely confused at this point, the gravity of the situation not quite registering. I have never seen one myself, but there are legends about those bracelets. The ones with 8 dragons are only given to those in the direct family of the true dragons themselves, and act as recognition between them, regardless of the form they might take. Because you don't seem to know the significance behind the bracelets given by true dragons, I will give you some more information that was passed down to me. There is a second set of bracelets given to those whom the true dragon family trusts the most, consisting of a single dragon, the color depending on who the person was closest with. Just one of those bracelets would be worth enough to buy the entire world. The weight they carry is immense, as they not only mark the person as someone trusted by the highest beings, but also give them the authority to talk with almost anyone they want, be they commoners, kings, or even the true dragons and eldest of the demon lords. Before you ask, I don't know who still has one. The Void Princess who made them died around 1800 years ago, and none have been given out since. Most of the people who had them would have died by now of old age, outside of the few immortal exceptions. Gazelle had just dropped a lot of information on me that I wished I had known sooner. The main saving grace was that Katarina's bracelet had turned invisible, so no one would be able to see it and act on greed to try and claim it. I sat in my chair for a while processing the information before finally looking up. Thank you for the information, but that leads me to ask one more question. If a bracelet is worth that much, would it cause those who wear one to become a target of others? I needed to know before something happened that I didn't expect. It might, but after the first few times people tried, it became clear that the bracelets weren't given to weak people. Not only that, but when someone died of natural causes, the bracelet would shatter upon their last breath, making it impossible to steal off a corpse. Some people did try to cut them off by taking a hand, as they are locked onto a person, making it impossible to get off normally, but the bracelet would just teleport to a new part of the body instantly. Gazelle was quick to answer my question, easily seeing past my worry for Katarina's safety. I eventually nodded in thanks as I let out a relieved sigh. Thank you. Thankfully, Kat's bracelet turned invisible the moment she put it on, so other people won't be able to see it and get it into their heads to try something stupid. After such a weighty topic, the rest of our conversation went by smoothly as we talked about trade opportunities, and I secured several more researchers for our potion production in exchange for Tempest taking over as Dworgen's potion supplier. Gazelle naturally requested more of the whiskey and brandy that we had brought as well, which I promised him once we could make it reliably. It was briefly mentioned that Milim was the one who killed Charybdis at one point, which everyone readily accepted after hearing the story about how Milim was Katarina's sister. The rest of our conversation covered what would be happening in the next few days, such as a speech on my part and a guided tour through the city. The next few days flew by quickly, as there was plenty to keep us busy. Katarina had started training with the dwarfs in the mornings under the guidance of Vaughn, and he had nothing but good things to say about her skill in combat. I was glad to hear that she was improving and even fared decently while outnumbered in mock fights. I had no doubt that the experience would help her to grow more in the future, and I made sure to join once or twice to not waste the chance as well. The rest of the time was spent exploring Dworgen and seeing some of the technology they had to offer, which normally we would never be able to see if not for the treaty we had in place between our countries. One thing that did perplex me was Katarina buying a large amount of paper and asking Sage to make pencils and pens for her to use. She didn't seem to like the ink and quill that was still in wide use in this world after she learned about the writing utensils I had back in my old life. The only major thing that happened of note, outside of the guided tour, was the speech I had to make to the people of Dworgen. I had thought it went really well, but Gazelle criticized my speech harshly afterward. The after effect of Gazelle criticizing me was that Katarina vowed to never do another speech in public ever again, much to my amusement. On the last day we were at Dworgen, I took Gobta and the other men to the Butterflies of the Night as a reward, and to fulfill the promise I made to Gobta after the last time we visited. I am choosing not to remember what happened that night, as it still makes me shiver just thinking about it. I was completely worn out mentally by the time we were on our way home after spending several days in Dworgen. There was one last surprise waiting for me as we all climbed into the wagons and left the kingdom, and that came in the form of Katarina handing me a small stack of papers. What is this? Please don't tell me it's paperwork I need to sign. I couldn't hide the confusion in my voice as I spoke. Katarina just giggled at my response. No, silly. Can you give them to Sue? He might find them helpful. Benimaru might like a copy as well, now that I think about it. With my curiosity piqued, I started to flip through the papers, my shock growing with each one I looked at. The small stack of papers contained highly detailed maps of the Jura Forest, Tempest, the city of Dworgen, and even Gazelle's castle. Altogether, there was enough detail in each one to allow spies and armies to make detailed plans with accurate information on pathways, distances, and even locations of note. Blinking a few times before looking up from the papers, I could only watch Katarina to see if she knew the implications of what she had made. I didn't know you had an interest in map-making, I said, in a roundabout manner of asking why she made them, not wanting to put her off, especially with how much these maps could help Tempest in the future. I didn't have an interest at first, but... She stopped and looked at Shuna and Shen. She suggested I try it out to help cure my boredom while waiting for the fight with Charybdis to be settled. I'm glad she caught herself, I thought. Sage is still a secret between the two of us, and I am planning to keep it that way for the time being. I let out a sigh as I took in the information, making a note to thank both Sage and Katarina later for the maps. Glad to have my curiosity settled about why Katarina wanted the paper and new, highly detailed maps that could help in the future, I decided to drop the topic. Thank you for these, then. I'm sure they will be helpful in the future. I will be sure to pass them along to those who could use them, and if you make any more, I would love to see them as well. I felt the atmosphere relax after I said those words. With the topic closed, our conversations leaned more toward casual things, such as observations about our trip here and what we could bring to Tempest to help it improve. While the trip was short, it was an eye-opening experience for all of us as we got to see how an established nation worked, and we now had the public backing of one of the strongest nations in the world.